Hello, you lovely cubs, and welcome back to another video. It's the Dragon Lord here, back again with What If Tanjiro Was a Prodigy, Part 3. I had a like goal of 30 likes on the last video, and you guys crushed it. Well, I say crushed it, but you guys got it, so here's the next part. Today's video will also have a like goal, but that will be at the end of the video, so mwahahaha. Well, yeah, well, whatever, right. Yeah, if you guys like the series so far, like and subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get into it.
Yeah, you better listen. I'm bringing heat. You'll be a fan when I start rapping. Way I'll have your fucking head spinning. I'm known as spit vicious. Release bombs, they go tick tick. Boom, you gon' leave that head missing. I'm a phenomenon. Stacking cheese like it's Parmesan. 8 different flows, call me Octomom. I'm moving fast like the Autobahn. And I'm independent, so I'm not your fucking starving like it's Ramadan. Sick, twisted, gifted. Can't copy, printed. Can't hold me down. I shape shift, I'm liquid. I killed this beat. I might get convicted. They know how I move.
Tanjiro would wake up after being passed out for a day because, he was exhausted from fighting Ryui and all the demons and the Hashira. He was so exhausted that he slept an entire day. When he awoke, he was afraid for his sister, but the girl that was tending to his wounds and small injuries told him that there was nothing to worry about because she's safe and she was in a room where sunlight couldn't get to her. This made, of course, Tanjiro very happy, who was delighted because his sister wasn't in danger anymore. And then he saw Zenitsu and Inosuke, and he saw their states. Now, he saw that Zenitsu and Inosuke were quite uh, hurt, with Zenitsu's arms being surprisingly small, and with Inosuke's voice being all roughed up. He was concerned for his friends, but they told him that they are all right. Very quickly, the butterfly Hashira, Shinobu, came inside of the room, and she told Tanjiro that they had a training for them set up, a rehabilitation training for Inosuke and Zenitsu, but that it could also strengthen them, and she recommended Tanjiro to take it. Now, Tanjiro, of course, was interested because getting stronger was his goal after all, so he follows one of the maid girls, or the helper girls, that was nursing him, and she brings him to the training room, and he sees, for the third time, he sees Kanoe, which is the girl that was on the mountain, on both mountains, one of which was the Spider Mountain and the other was Final Selection. Now, she apologizes to Tanjiro, and Tanjiro apologizes to her for, fighting her and actually slightly hurting her. Now, she doesn't take it personally, and she's actually part of the rehabilitation training. So Tanjiro goes through most of it without actually feeling the pain. He saw it more as a way of getting stronger and not, he didn't see it painfully. So the pain in it was just part of getting stronger. And then he had the match with the cups with Kanoe. Now, Tanjiro would be stronger than Kanoe, and he would put the cup on her head. Now, Aoi would see this, and she would ask Tanjiro if he was using total concentration, breathing constant. And Tanjiro was confused, and he said no, he was just using his normal movement speed. And she was surprised because that shouldn't be possible since Kanoe was using total concentration, breathing constant. So she explains to Tanjiro what it is, and Tanjiro then tries it. Now, he tries it with water breathing, and really quickly he gets it down because he had made a training off of his own when he was still training under Orogodaki, where he would use the breathing constantly while doing sword swings, but then after just walking around and stuff like that, he would just have it normal because he didn't see the point in it afterwards. Now, after they explained that if he used total concentration breathing constant, he would slowly increase his stamina, but it would also make him stronger. And then it kind of clicked, and he would have another match with Kanoe. And he would use water breathing while breathing constantly, which was easier on his body. And he managed to do it. And then he easily beat Kanoe, like not even a match. And then he would still do the training. So he would lift the boulders and he would do all of that to then eventually blow the gourd. So he blew the gourd after one day of training really hard, and he would blow the gourd and it would, explode or not explode, but because of the air pressure, it would bust. And now this surprised most of the people because this took even some Hashira multiple days to master, and these Hashiras were already very special, like the Mist Hashira. Now, Tanjiro, he said that he kind of already had a grasp on how to do it, and he started using water breathing as his base breathing, but then he said that he would still train, but to use his Hinokami Kagura, or his sun breathing technique, because he hadn't been able to use it to its fullest power yet. So Tanjiro started training, and a few days after, Inosuke would join him and he would teach Inosuke, and Inosuke would get more powerful as well. And Tanjiro would try to get a grasp on the sun breathing technique, but every time he used it, he would get a slight fever, and it would actually worry some of the maids. Now, he, of course, told them to not worry and that it's just part of his training and to get his body used to the power. So he also started using the forms he knew, which was all up to the sixth form. He didn't know more than that, or he couldn't recall more than that. But he started using the first six forms, and he tried to teach himself what is the best ways of using them. Now, he had struggled for a bit because he wasn't used to it, obviously, but eventually it went pretty well. And before Inosuke even had a grasp on how to use it constantly, he had already mastered the sun breathing, constant breathing technique, and he was able to blow up the gourd with that. After that, Tanjiro would just start training the moves. He would train the forms, and he would try to recall the forms from the Hinokami Kagura dance because he had only seen the dance in its complete form, and he wanted to learn the moves separately before trying to combine them to make the final form of the dance. And Tanjiro, he started doing that, and then eventually Inosuke, who was really not liking the training, which made Zenitsu worry, eventually, went back, and Zenitsu would join after a few days, and then Zenitsu was mad at Inosuke for making the training look like hell, but then he started training with Tanjiro, and then they all started training together, and Tanjiro would teach him the total concentration breathing or the ways that he trained it, and they would very quickly catch up to him. And they caught up fast enough to where they still had 2 days of free time, and in those 2 days, Tanjiro would actually have, and Tanjiro in this time would have had enough time to learn and master the first three forms or techniques of sun breathing or Hinokami Kagura, which were dance, clear blue sky, and raging sun. He would have mastered these three to the point where if he needed them, he could use them without too much strain on his body. And then he had also learned burning bones, summer sun, setting sun transformation, and the solar heat haze. So he learned those three, but those three would still strain his body a bit because he wasn't used to using them. Now, Hero was still training his physical body to match the Hinokami Kakura, and he still needed to focus a lot on the fever aspect. So what he did to improve himself further was actually continue learning water breathing, because he thought that, he has sun breathing and then he can cool himself with water breathing, is what he thought. So he started using water breathing more, and then he wanted to see if he could combine water breathing and sun breathing. So obviously he asked Inosuke and Zenitsu if they wanted to spar. Now, in terms of power, Tanjiro was way above them, and then it would be Inosuke, because Inosuke got training more than Zenitsu in the time that Zenitsu was recovering, and then it would be Zenitsu. Now, Inosuke and Zenitsu, they're not far apart, and Zenitsu could easily surpass Inosuke, but because of some restrictions on Inosuke's, mentality, he can't completely overpower Zenitsu if they were to fight, full power. But Tanjiro asked them if they could both come to him and he would fight them, and they would only lightly spar, and they would use these wooden sparring swords to not harm each other. So he would use water breathing as defense, and then he would use sun breathing as offense. So he would obviously fight Inosuke and Zenitsu at the same time. Now, Zenitsu would panic and fall asleep, so Zenitsu would actually start fighting seriously. And Zenitsu would use a thunderclap and flash and instantly just appear in front of Tanjiro and then deliver a slash. But Tanjiro, he uses the third form, which then deflects the attack from Zenitsu, and then he would instantly try to use Raging Sun to counterattack. But then Inosuke would come in and use his uh, beast breathing and counter Tanjiro, and their fight would go on until eventually Zenitsu and Inosuke. Well, Zenitsu would wake up and then be exhausted without him knowing why, and then Inosuke would be just exhausted, and Tanjiro would still be fine to go on. So Tanjiro realizes that there's a lot of combos that he can do with water and Hinokami Kagura, or sun breathing. And he's quite happy with it because he has a defense and a perfect offense, basically. So he's quite happy with what he found. But it's hard for him right now to completely mix the two or use both very in quick succession. But he is able to do it for 2 to 3 minutes tops, and then he starts getting a bit more exhausted, and then he has to span it out faster or further, I mean. So anyway, they get 2 more days, and in those 2 more days, Zenitsu and Inosuke, they keep training, and Tanjiro, he's just talking to Kanoe for those 2 days, and they really bond. He's telling her that she can make her own decisions, and if she doesn't know what to do, that she can flip a coin, and it really sticks with Kanoe that he's a good guy, and they just talk a lot, and they really bond, so they become friends. And Kanoe also becomes friends with Nezuko, because Nezuko would kind of treat her like a sister, and that gave her flashbacks to Shinobu's sister and the former flower Hashira, and it made her super, happy, kind of like that. Now, in the time that they spent at the Butterfly Mansion, Inosuke got his new blades, and Tanjiro got his new blade. Now, his new blade, the blacksmith would say that it's a bit better around the part where the last one broke, and the blacksmith starts apologizing that he didn't make the blade as well as he did, because he heard that Tanjiro's a sun breath user, and he heard that the sun breath user, like Yoruichi, which is the previous one, that they have this near perfect skill, and that they can't make flaws. And he starts apologizing, and then Tanjiro says that it's all right, and that it's actually his fault for faulty swordsman work, and they just get to this kind of agreement that, both of them could do better. So Tanjiro then, grabs his new blade, and it still becomes black, but it still has that flower pattern on it, those fire flower patterns, and he performs the first three moves. And the blacksmith, he saw Tanjiro perform the moves before, but they were more rough, and he realizes that Tanjiro has been trying to perfect them, and he's kind of glad that somebody who is a sun breath user is using his blade to become stronger. And then he sees Tanjiro, do the fourth, fifth, and sixth move, which he saw before as well, and he did them better than before, or well, what the blacksmith thought as better, and he's quite happy. He sees that Tanjiro's making progress, and there's that. The other blacksmith, who is there for Inosuke's blades, gives Inosuke his blades, and they turn into that nice kind of gray, light bluish color, and they're happy now. Inosuke starts making dents in his blade, and the blacksmith gets mad and has to be held back by Tanjiro. And then Inosuke explains that he likes the blades better when they're chipped. And, well, yeah, the blacksmiths leave with, Tanjiro's blacksmith being happy, and with Inosuke's blacksmith being furious. Now, they get their assignment to go to a train because people have been, seen missing on that train and started going missing on that train. So, they set out, all three of them, and they get to the train. They get on the train after getting chased by some guards, and they go through the carts, and they eventually find the Flame Hashra, or the Fire Hashra, or whatever you want to call him, Rengoku. And Tanjiro sits down next to Rengoku, and they have a chat. Now, Rengoku asks Tanjiro to become his disciple, and Tanjiro actually agrees to this. He wants to learn from Rengoku because he's the Flame Hashra, the Flame Pillar. And Rengoku's quite happy that Tanjiro instantly accepted. And they start talking, and Rengoku starts talking about his father, who was obsessed with the, you know, with the sun breathing, and he starts talking about all these things, and Tanjiro also starts talking about his past, and his family and his father and stuff like that, and they really start to bond. And Rengoku and Tanjiro kind of give off this vibe that they've been friends for a while, that just are starting to catch up again. So anyway, the train conductor guy passes, and he starts asking them, he needs to punch holes in their cards, which they do, and then they eventually fall asleep with the kids tying themselves to them. Now, the first person to wake up is Tanjiro. He wakes up because he realizes that they're in a dream, and he doesn't hurt the boy who because the boy sees what Tanjiro had to go through and how pure kind of silence Tanjiro's subconscious is, and how innocent and pure Tanjiro himself is. And the boy is, happy to have seen that. And then there is Rengoku, who's, his subconscious is just flames, and the girl ends up, he ends up waking up, Zenitsu ends up waking up, and Inosuke ends up waking up, and they all wake up. And then they realize that there's demon, that the train is the demon. So they split up, and Rengoku says that he'll manage a few carts, and Inosuke will manage. Inosuke and Tanjiro, they set out to kill the demon, and then Nezuko and Zenitsu, they'll take care of the rest of the carts that Rengoku can't take care of. So they protect the people while Tanjiro and Inosuke go after the demon. Now, they find the demon's human body, which Tanjiro just instantly decapitates. The demon tries to speak, but Tanjiro just doesn't care because of what he saw in his dream. He's pissed, so he just decapitates the demon just dies right off the bat. And then Tanjiro remembers that the demon is actually the train. So they want to go cut the neck of the demon, so they find the spot where it would be, and both Inosuke and Tanjiro, they run at it. Now the demon puts them into the sleep, and Tanjiro still does the thing where he kills himself in to wake up to reality, right? And it gets to the point where he nearly kills himself in the reality, but he realizes what the demon is doing and then snaps out of it. So Inosuke comes in and he blinds the demon mostly, and then Tanjiro rushes in and does first form, which is dance, and he vertically slashes the the neck, or where the neck of the demon would be, and the train crashes, but Rengoku, Zenitsu, and them, they save the passengers, and then they get out of the train. Now they meet up with Rengoku, and all of a sudden they see this demon standing in front of them. Now, Rengoku instantly knows that this is something Zenitsu and Inosuke can't handle. So, he kind of makes this signal to Tanjiro, and that he's gonna fight this, but if it gets too dangerous, he should jump in. So, he starts fighting this demon, which is Akaza, and Akaza keeps babbling on about how Rengoku should join the demons because he's really strong and that he would make the perfect demon, stuff like that, and that in 2 or 3 more decades he could be this ultimate life form. And Rengoku, he isn't having anything. He's calling the cap of Akaza, he's saying stuff like, "I'm setting my heart ablaze, son," and he's fighting Akaza, full power, but Akaza's still overpowering him. Now, it's at this point where Rengoku is already bleeding from his legs and his arms, but he doesn't have any wounds that are fatal yet. And then Akaza says it's a real damn shame, and he does this move, and he aims it at Rengoku, and Rengoku, he starts countering, so he uses his own move, and he's prepared to give his all to stop Akaza, and he rushes at Akaza, and Akaza rushes at him. But before the two can even collide, Tanjiro gets in their way and uses the fourth form, Burning Bones, Summer Sun, and he cuts off Akaza's arm and then his leg, and Akaza jumps back and he tries to regenerate them, but he realizes that it's taking a bit longer. Now, he couldn't feel Tanjiro's rage or anger or even the intent to attack, and Tanjiro didn't have that intent. Now, Rengoku, he sees this and he's about to pass out, just mainly from using that form and that move. He's exhausted, and Tanjiro tells him to go rest and that he will take on Akaza from now on. Now, Akaza's pissed because one, Tanjiro sliced off his arm and his leg, and he's not even a Hashira, so he's just yelling at and insulting Tanjiro. Now, Tanjiro, he focuses for a second, he takes a deep breath, and then when he opens his eyes again, he can see Akaza's muscles in his brain. Tanjiro had just unlocked the see-through world without even knowing it, and it amazed him, so he rushed at Akaza, and Akaza would rush back. Now, they would start fighting, and really quickly it would come apparent that Tanjiro is nearly Akaza's match. He would use water breathing to defend from most of Akaza's attacks, and he would use sun breathing to cut off his arms or even slice them. Now, Akaza would have a harder time because every time Tanjiro cut off his arm, it wouldn't regenerate instantly. It would take a bit longer because of the sun breathing. And Akaza couldn't feel any intentions from Tanjiro. He couldn't feel the rage. He couldn't feel the intent to kill. He was in this selfless state of mind. And Akaza keeps attacking Tanjiro, and Tanjiro keeps deflecting attacks, and nothing that Akaza is throwing is hitting Tanjiro. Eventually, Akaza backs off, and in that instant, Tanjiro takes his chance, leaps forward, and slashes vertically. But he just narrowly misses Akaza's neck, but he's able to slice it to the point where there's a visible mark. And Akaza's pissed because he's like, how dare you slice at my neck? But he quickly calms down and he realizes that Tanjiro is a worthy match. Now, the cells in his blood are going haywire, Muzan's cells, because he sees this and he's like, Muzan's cells are getting scared of Tanjiro. So Akaza just has this thing of, I need to kill Tanjiro right now. So he uses his martial arts and he gets in this stance, and Tanjiro feels that a powerful move is coming, so he prepares his own to counterfight. Now Tanjiro was going to use the sixth form, Solar Heat Haze, but he then got this memory and he thought of the Hinokami Kagura again and his father telling him to breathe, and he figured out what the seventh form is. So he uses the seventh form instead, which is Beneficent Radiance, and he just gets in the pose and Akaza rushes at him, and in an instant just this sideways tornado of fire rushes at Akaza, and his fists get cut up, his arms, and they get cut up in such tiny pieces that Akaza himself can hardly believe it. And then Tanjiro, right in Akaza's face, Akaza's both his arms are and legs are nearly completely slashed. So he's basically just falling towards Tanjiro right now. And then Tanjiro prepares to do the next attack, and he almost cuts off Akaza's head, but in that instant he forgot to breathe and he gets stuck in this motion where he's right at Akaza's neck, and then he starts gasping for air. In that next instant, Akaza stands over Tanjiro, who is now, coughing up blood, and he's prepared to just stomp Tanjiro, but then he sees this ray, and it's a ray of light, and he sees the sun, and he starts running for it. And Tanjiro is mad, because they've always fought on the demon's terms, at night, but a demon would never fight in day, even if they're shadow. So he runs after Akaza and he throws his katana with one powerful breath, and it just takes off Akaza's entire arm and pins it to a tree. And Akaza grabs the demon slayer's sword, which is Tanjiro's swords, and he grabs it and he starts running, and he's mad, but he lets it go because he can't go back to fight. Now, Rengoku, he sees all of this and he's impressed because Tanjiro nearly killed Akaza, which is an Upper Moon demon at that. Upper Moon 3. Now, Rengoku, who was almost Akaza's match, he was impressed by this, obviously. He was stunned. He didn't know what to say. Now, he did want to take in Tanjiro and train with him because he felt like if he trained with Tanjiro and he taught him all the things that he knew, that they could beat Muzan. So they got all the passengers after that and they treated them. And then the crows, they came and they saw Rengoku's, wounds. And they realized that Rengoku could have died here if it wasn't for Tanjiro. If it wasn't for Tanjiro, Rengoku could have definitely died here, along with Zenitsu and all of them. So, you know, they get called back to Ubuyashiki's mansion, which is where they go. And Ubuyashiki, he bows, and he bows to Tanjiro, and he says, "Thank you. Thank you for saving Rengoku." Now, there's two other Hashira there, one of which is Giyu, and the other one is the Butterfly Hashira, who both see this. And they're confused, and then they realize that then Rengoku gives the mission report, which they have to give because there was a lower ranked demon or lower moon demon which they defeated, and there was an upper ranked demon. Now, they talk, and uh, Rengoku explains the mission report, and he explains what happened, and that he and how he was wounded, and how the others were wounded, and he explains that Tanjiro and Inosuke took down the lower moon demon together, but that both of them could have well done it alone. He says this with a smile on his face and just this confidence, which they haven't really, like Giyu and Shinobu both haven't seen this from him in a while. He hadn't spoken about someone like this. So he then also explains that Zenitsu could have as well have beaten the lower moon demon because of his sleep state, and he was very impressed with how Zenitsu kept up with, him at saving the passengers from the carts. And he also explains that Nezuko helped a great deal as well. Ubuyashiki thanks all of them without bowing, and he thanks them, and he goes into the report of the Upper Moon Demon, and he explains how he fought Upper Moon 3. Now Gyu and Shinobu are shocked because basically all of the Upper Moon Demons have lived for nearly decades now, or centuries even in some cases, and they haven't been beaten by anybody for so long. Even Upper Moon 3 hasn't been beaten for so long, and to hear that Rengoku survived the encounter was intense. So Shinobu actually butted in. She was like, "Did you beat Upper Moon 3?" And Rengoku looks a bit less happy than he is, but he still says in his happy tone, "No, I did not," while having a half smile on his face. Now, Ubuyashiki asks what happened next. Now, Rengoku explains that he was almost a match for the Upper Moon 3 demon, but that he was still outmatched. But if it wasn't for Tanjiro, he would have died. And he says this still with a smile, and then he explains that Tanjiro was a match for Upper Moon 3 and that he was even beating Upper Moon 3. And this kind of shocks Gyu and Shinobu because Tanjiro, 2 years ago, he was strong in the form that he could surprise Gyu, but he wasn't able to keep up with a Hashira. So then there on the spot, Ubuyashiki proclaims that Tanjiro is now a Hashira, and he gets promoted to a Hashira, and he gets promoted to the Sun Hashira. And at first, Tanjiro doesn't want to accept, but Ubuyashiki, he understands, it's a lot of pressure, so he says that he has a few months or even a year if he wants to think about it. And Tanjiro asks if he could change the name to Hinokami Hashira, which Ubuyashiki wouldn't mind, but he then said that, it would mean Fire Hashira, so he would be basically the same thing as um, Rengoku, which he's not. Now he explains, further that Tanjiro is very helpful to their cause and that they need Tanjiro. And Tanjiro, he says two or three things which, are just basically praising the others for their work. And then he continues on that he's saying now that he's officially Rengoku's disciple. And Rengoku acknowledges this, and Ubuyashiki's a bit shocked because from what Rengoku said, Tanjiro is stronger than Rengoku, and Rengoku is one of the strongest Hashiras, so he definitely wanted to make Tanjiro a Hashira on the spot. And Tanjiro says something that, kind of shocks the others, and he says, "I feel like all Hashiras should just work together and learn from each other, because that's how we could make ourselves stronger, isn't it? Like, even learning a technique that wouldn't be compatible with our body, like how I did water breathing, helped me out a lot in the fight with with, Akaza. And Ubuyashiki acknowledges this, and then, he says that they should maybe do a training thing where they take all the Hashras and their disciples and they do a mismatch training for a few months just to see how fast they could get stronger. And, Giyu and Shinobu actually find this a good idea and are dumbfounded that they didn't think of it themselves yet. And Tanjiro then says that there's a few abilities that he thinks some Slayers will get that he got, because he then explains that when he was fighting Akaza, he could see through Akaza and he had the see through world, which, surprised Ubayashiki because there's only a few people who had that so far, one of which being the stone Hashira, or the stone pillar. Now, they continue to talk and talk and talk for basically 2 to 3 hours, and then eventually they leave. And Tanjiro follows Rengoku together with Zenitsu and Inosuke. Rengoku had promised them, or well, Rengoku had said to Tanjiro that he had this book about sun breathing and that he would wanted to give it to Tanjiro, but that his father has it. So basically, they go onward. Now, of course, Tanjiro also requested for a new sword to be made because his sword, he lunged it at Upper Moon 3. Now they go on and they go to, the Flame family's mansion, and they meet Rengoku's younger brother. And instantly, Tanjiro and his brother, they hit it off. They're friends. And then Rengoku's father comes outside and he sees Tanjiro and he instantly gets mad. Now he gets mad at Tanjiro and Tanjiro talks back, and because of that, Rengoku's father is about to strike Tanjiro. But Rengoku steps in and tells his father to stop because this boy, or Tanjiro, just saved his life, and that's no way to treat, his savior. Now, his father kind of gets mad and he says, "Oh, you had to be saved by a sun breath user. So pathetic. Shouldn't have become a Hashira if you can't even fight your own battles." And Tanjiro hears this and he just leaps and headbutts Rengoku's father. And, Tanjiro has a hard head, so Rengoku's father, he passes out. Rengoku is kind of surprised. And Tanjiro, he got mad because a father shouldn't speak like that to a son. Rengoku's father, after an hour, regains his consciousness and then gets up and he tries to find Rengoku. And Rengoku is talking with Inosuke and Zenitsu and Tanjiro, and they're eating dinner. And then his father joins them, and he's sobered up now as well. And he apologizes to Tanjiro and the others, and even Rengoku, for how he acted, and that he should really get his stuff together. Because he saw how happy Rengoku was, and how truly happy he was, and he saw how happy his younger brother was, so he decided to, stop being so cranky. And then Rengoku asks his father if they still have the archives of the sun breath moves, but then his father, he kind of looks down and he says, "I destroyed them. I'm sorry." And then he gives him the book, which is just torn up pages. And Tanjiro says that it's alright, because he still remembers the moves, he just doesn't know how to sequence them. Or, well, he knows the entire move set combined, but he doesn't know what they are apart, so he has to figure that out on his own. Now, Rengoku basically tells Tanjiro how they'll be training, what forms they'll be using, and he wants to teach Tanjiro flame breathing, and he asks Tanjiro if Tanjiro could teach him, sun breathing. And Tanjiro, he's fine with this. He wants to teach Rengoku. And Zenitsu and Inosuke, they also join in and they ask if Rengoku's training would be of any use to them. And Rengoku says yes, because they'll be training their physical bodies as well as, they'll be training their soul. Now, this is where I'm going to cut off this part. Now, we know that there's about a year gap between this and then the entertainment district arc. So in that year, instead of having them go to random missions and training in between, we're gonna have them go on missions with Rengoku, learn from Rengoku because Rengoku is an experienced Hashira way more than they are, and that's gonna do some good for our main three boys. And we're gonna also have Rengoku learn from Tanjiro, just like how Zenitsu and Inosuke learned from Tanjiro, and they're all gonna just boost each other up to higher levels. Yes, I kept Rengoku alive. Why? Because why not? I mean, best fucking man, you know? Have that guy as my best man at a wedding any day of the week. Anyway, yeah, Rengoku is still alive. So yeah, if you like that, maybe you should consider liking the video. Man, I'm a filthy shout out YouTuber. Nah, but okay. I said there would be a like goal for part 4. You'll never guess how many likes. Let's get to 40 likes. If you guys can get 40 likes, I'll do part 4. So yeah, 40 likes and I'll do part 4. You guys got to it last time, so let's see it again. Anyway, with that out of the way, like, subscribe, join the Discord if you haven't already. Also, check out the people linked in the description, as in any video. And with that out of the way, my name is the Dragon Lord, and I'm signing out.
Tell me a story.
There was once a pale man with dark hair who was very lonely.
Why was it lonely?
All things must meet this man, so they shunned him.
Did he chase them all?
He took an axe and split himself in two, right down the middle.
So he would always have a friend.
So he would always